Adore is a brand new dungeon crawling action combat monster taming game that releases in full access on Steam and consoles today as of the time of this video going live. The game itself has had a vast history of its own evolution, starting out as a roguelike experimenting with different mechanics to the aforementioned dungeon crawler it is now. I do want to iterate that the game is no longer a roguelike, which I know is a point of preference either for or against it, but today we're going to take a look at how enjoyable the game is so far. We'll touch on the story elements, gameplay, and some of the monsters present within the game too, since these are typically the three major aspects of any monster taming game that fans are interested in. So, as per the usual, sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Alright, so first up we got the characters and plot, and since this is an is it good so far type video, and not a full in-depth review, since the game did just come out, I haven't had time to fully beat it, but from what I will say so far, the story premise is pretty simplistic. You basically have the big bad guy who's defeated the good guy, then the good guy ends up inside you, sort of Naruto Jinchuriki style, and basically you've got to power up to beat the bad guy. One thing I will say about Draknar, aka the good guy in this scenario, is that he's kind of sassy, and so are a lot of the other characters in the camp. They definitely have their own quirks, and essentially how the story plays out is you're given a little bit of exposition between each major event, then you're sent into the various dungeons to complete certain quests, rinse and repeat. There's nothing inherently wrong with the story, however, I wouldn't say that this is the type of game that you're going to buy specifically for a vast story either. There's a story there, however, it's more of a facet to push the gameplay elements, which we're going to talk about in a second. So I've got a few hours into the game at this point, so I've pretty much explored most of the major gameplay elements, but to simplify, the game has a control scheme similar to something like League of Legends or Diablo or even modern RuneScape, where you kind of point and click where you want to go, and you have 4 different abilities on your keyboard, slotted under Q, W, E, and R. Obviously, there are controller controls as well, but basically this is a main layout. The abilities in question, however, are not your typical skills. They're actually attached to individual monsters that you can capture. Essentially what happens is you select one of these skills during combat, a monster comes out, does its little combo, it uses up stamina, and then you can call them back. The character themselves doesn't really attack, it's all monster based, which adds a really cool layer of strategic action combat here. Furthermore, there are certain mechanics to this that make it a little riskier than simply just backing off and letting your monsters do all the work. If your monster reaches 0 health, it won't die, it'll instead transfer its taken damage towards you, the summoner, or adorer as it's referred to in game, meaning that you can't just spam your monsters and sit back and exploit the game that way. The gameplay loop essentially revolves around you hopping in and out of randomly generated realms in order to complete various objectives. Each of these realms will contain various loot for you to pick up, which can include, but is certainly not limited to, orbs that you can get to capture more monsters, shards that'll allow you to upgrade various abilities, or even blessed creatures that sort of act like shinies in a way, but in this case they're not just differently colored, but they're the more powerful monsters in that they get more trait points. There's also super blessed monsters, which are basically like a fully realized mon with the maximum amount of trait points. As you play through the game, you'll receive trait points for your monsters, which will allow them to have upgraded passive skills, like allowing for more gold when you win a battle, cause the enemies to take damage when you recall, etc. The game has a few other systems in place as well that add complexity, like artifacts and runes that give a number of effects for the player. There's also synergy, which allows for certain monsters to gain certain benefits based on who they have with them in the party as well, so that's pretty cool. I know it sounds like we're glossing over this stuff, but there is a lot of complexity here, and I feel like it would be much better situated for a separate video if you guys want to see something like that. Honestly, I feel like the game plays sort of like an action combat version of a game like Siralum, where you have your main hub where you can kind of stock up, get more powerful, etc. And then you have a bunch of different realms that you can explore or go on expeditions, which are essentially the same but with better benefits and are one time only. Honestly, after seeing this game grow and playing it multiple times throughout its development, I really do think it found its home with this sort of gameplay loop and allows for a sense of progression whilst also staying true to its dungeon crawling elements. Finally, the monsters themselves. Now, this game doesn't have a huge roster. It boasts around 40 monsters. However, it's important to remember that this is not a simple turn-based game with very simple animations. All of these monsters are fully rigged and have a plethora of unique animations and playstyles. Each monster acts completely different from one another, and all of them come together with their own unique attributes. So I never once felt like the game didn't have enough monsters. Adore is a monster taming game, but it's not necessarily a creature collector like titles such as Pokemon Pokemon, Nexamon, or Koromon. It treats the monsters similarly to the way they're treated in Shin Megami Tensei, where you can only hold a limited amount, however you can upgrade your storage space, and the main focus for use of them is combat, not as a means of collection. That said, there is a bestiary, so you can fill that out and explore that completionist side of things, but again, the monsters are treated a little differently here. But yeah, that's pretty much it as for my early thoughts on Adore. Let me know in the comments down below if you want to see a full spoiler review once I've gotten to the end of the game. I just really wanted to get this out day one so people don't miss out on the game. I'm honestly having a lot of fun, and also don't forget to let me know what kind of content you guys need for Adore. I've recorded a few Let's Plays already, but in terms of guides and breakdowns and stuff like that, I think the game does a pretty good job of explaining how things work and whatnot, but I could see myself putting together like a tips and tricks or a more general guide video or something like that. But other than that, if you did enjoy the video, definitely make sure to like and subscribe. You can check out my Twitter, Discord, and Patreon linked below. And special thanks to my patrons, especially Jim Hamilton, Drove Ghost, Dark Persona Exodus, and Candy Marunci. And we'll see you next time. Peace.